NATO is ready for a war with Russia. That is what the Secretary General has just stated after a press conference, and it comes after Putin's comments just yesterday saying, we're not planning to go to war with Europe, but if Europe wants to and starts, we're ready right now. If you don't know, earlier today, the defense ministers met in Brussels for a meeting essentially to talk about, well, realistically speaking, it's about Russia, but other topics. And then afterwards, the Secretary General came out and gave a little speech. But the big point of all of this is that NATO is an alliance, and NATO says, hey, if Russia truly wants to start a war, we as a whole are ready. And to quote the Secretary General, he says, finally, NATO is a defensive alliance. We will remain a defensive alliance, but make no mistake, we are ready and willing to do what it takes to protect our 1 billion people and secure our territory. You see, right now, Putin's trying to put all the blame on Europe and why peace cannot be achieved, most likely because he's upset he just can't roll into Ukraine and take everything. But the reason why Putin feels threatened is because Russia is actually threatening and doing sabotage acts inside of Europe. And now Europe is saying, hey, we need to step up and stop these things before they actually come, so we're going to do these preemptive things. And well, that's what made Putin threaten Europe, which is ultimately, dude, you started this. We're responding, and now you're getting angry with us. But just so that we're clear, at this very moment, Russia and NATO are not going to war. So don't worry about that for right now. All is good. I'll be sure to keep you updated on this, though, so please do share my videos and follow me for more. NATO was the dominant conversation piece last night when we saw U.S. representatives sitting down with Vladimir Putin. At least that is what the Kremlin aide is stating right now. And let's break this down, because the number one thing that Russia is scared of right now is Ukraine joining NATO, or NATO expanding completely. And it's a weird scenario we're part of, because essentially NATO would never expand into where it is today if it wasn't for the Russian aggression. In the peace plan, at least the current version of it, it states that Ukraine can never join NATO, something that Ukraine wasn't even considering doing until, well, Russia invaded them. After discussing NATO, according to the Russian aide, the United States says that they will agree to, quote-unquote, factor in the Russian positions, something that Washington has not even confirmed. Heck, we actually really haven't gotten much information from Washington, D.C. about this meeting. Interestingly, the Kremlin says that another thing that they talked about is, well, the significant gains that the Russians have gotten since their last meeting, in which it doesn't really make much sense, because going into the meeting that day, Russia had claimed that they had taken the Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk, something in which the only thing we have is Russians, too, running in, filming a video with a flag, and then running out, in which hours later we then got footage of Ukrainians nearby, which kind of, you know, those two they can't go together at the same time. Just as a reference note, right now the Russians either partially control or control about 19% of Ukraine. In the past 2 years, they've gotten less than 1%. And so Russia wants other land, the other side of where they're currently at. And if you look at the statistics, it would take them about 2 to 3 years to get that area. So why would Ukraine just kind of give that up in the peace talk, right? It's because of a lot of this back and forth that we've gotten to the point to where the Russians said that they're not willing to compromise. There's nothing there for them to compromise on, because from what we're understanding, Russia is still sticking to exactly the same thing that they've been saying since the beginning. There has been no change, which is something that I hope that Donald Trump eventually takes note of, that, hey, you need to do more for Ukraine, because clearly Ukraine is willing to compromise on things. Russia's not. You have to kind of bully Russia into essentially, you got to accept this, or we're going to make you accept this. And one little funny thing I want to add is the fact that we're still finding out that the Kremlin had asked the United States to not talk to Zelensky before going to Trump, which is very strange. A lot of us believe it's because they don't want, Ukraine to actually educate the U.S. before the U.S. kind of gives them this Russian manipulation story. That a meeting between Zelensky and Steve Witkoff was actually canceled. So the U.S. kind of kept that promise. But let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below. It's going to be a crazy next few days with a lot of news coming out. Hungary is gearing up for a fight with the European Union as it pertains to Russian gas. And this is because, well, by the end of 2027, there's supposed to be no more Russian gas coming into any European country. At least it's got to be reduced to a point to where it's really not significant for Russia. And well, Hungary today has just announced that it's going to launch an immediate legal challenge against this plan. And I mean, we kind of knew this was coming. Viktor Orban literally flew out to Russia to meet with Putin and kind of made a promise that he's going to continue to buy the Russian fuel, even though the US only gave Hungary a 1-year extension, and they said that was it. After that, we're not extending that anymore. The EU plan is actually pretty straightforward and clear, and it's something that's kind of been in the works since 2022 when Russia first invaded. And that is, by November of 2027, we want you to wean down and be done by the 1st of November. After that, you get to buy from someone else. But Hungary, at least Viktor Orban, has been such a giant bestie, we'll just say that, with Putin that he doesn't want to do that. And he has purposely put that country in a position in which the Hungarian people are going to suffer. Because unlike other countries that's been waning themselves down, 74% of natural gas in Hungary comes from Russia, and 84% of its oil comes from a Russian pipeline. And Viktor Orban makes the claim that there are no alternatives because ultimately Hungary is a landlocked country, but that's not true. There are other countries that can do this through. It's just he doesn't want to do it. The bottom line is the European Union is doing everything possible to starve Russia of money. And right now, Hungary is still giving Russia a lot of it, meaning that Hungary essentially is funding Russia's war in Ukraine. And we're trying to stop that. I'll be sure to keep you guys updated on this, so please do share my videos and follow me for more. We are now officially hearing from Zelensky after yesterday's meeting between the United States and the Kremlin. And I want to read this for you in full. We're preparing meetings in the United States after the American team returns from Moscow and following the relevant consultations in Washington. He talked about his team, saying that along with them and the rest of the negotiating team, we'll continue discussing with the envoys of President Trump. We expect news in the coming days regarding such meetings, contacts, and talks, whether in person or by phone. All partners are in regular contact with each other and with Ukraine. Everything is now proceeding quite effectively. At meetings in Geneva and Florida, Ukraine was heard and Ukraine was listened to. And that matters, and we expect it will continue exactly this way. A dignified peace is only possible if Ukraine's interests are taken into account. Right now, the world clearly feels that there is a real opportunity to end the war, and the current diplomatic activity and negotiations must be backed by pressure on Russia. Everything depends on this very combination: constructive diplomacy plus pressure on the aggressor. Both components work towards peace. SpaceX documents have just been leaked. And this is probably one of the most serious breaches that SpaceX has ever had, and it's not because of an American, it's because of a Russian. That's right, a Russian cosmonaut has been found taking pictures of very sensitive information and documentation and putting it in places he's not supposed to. This all circles around a Russian cosmonaut who's actually a veteran, Oleg Artemyev. When I mean veteran, I mean this guy had spent over 560 days in space, meaning that yes, this guy is highly experienced. According to the report, he reportedly photographed SpaceX's engine designs and technical documents while training inside of California. He then, for some reason, took them on his phone and sent them out. This is a major problem. And the Russians are trying to keep this on the DL. Instead of saying that he's fired, they just kind of removed him from the next planned flight and then just said he's doing another job. And this comes at a time where the space agency for Russia right now ain't doing well because, well, they just destroyed their own launching pad, meaning for the first time since the Soviet Union, they have no way of launching men into space. That aside, this next mission, which is actually taking place in February 2026, is still on schedule. It's part of the Crew 12. But at this moment, we have no comment from NASA or SpaceX on this, which makes you wonder how deep this breach really truly goes and who's trying to cover it up. I will, of course, keep you updated on this, so please do share my videos and follow me for more. Major escalation inside the Black Sea now has Turkey scared. That is what Turkey's foreign minister has stated, and we need to break it down because, as you may know, there's been recent attacks on Russian-linked tankers. These are called shadow fleets, and they transport gas and fuel across the world to try to avoid sanctions and other things. And well, right now, we know that there was a strike on a Russian ship inside Turkey's own exclusive economic zone. And that has Turkey on edge because that's something they definitely don't want near them. And while, yes, Ukraine has taken responsibility for some of these shadow fleets being attacked, there was another boat attacked off of the coast of Turkey. This one had sunflower oil in it. Long story short of it, there was an explosion, and Ukraine said that wasn't us. Many believe it was a Russian false flag. And well, now we're seeing countries such as Turkey, Romania, and Bulgaria all discussing new kind of safety measures because this is a security issue if these boats are exploding near where their shipping lanes are and or off their coast. This has now made one of the larger Turkish shipping companies to kind of say, hey, you know what? We're no longer doing business with Russia. These operations are no longer safe, and we want nothing to do with this, and now Russia's angry. The bottom line is we're getting to a point now to where Russia's war is now affecting other countries, even though it's not directly affecting them, but it could in their safety, especially when it comes to shipping. And so now we're seeing countries like Turkey work with NATO to see how we can make it safer for everyone. But in the meanwhile, Russia, we don't want to do business with you. Well, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. I'll be sure to keep you updated, so please do share my videos and follow me for more. Peace talks are coming back to the United States. That is what the Ukrainian foreign minister just said, that actually Washington, D.C. had requested and invited the Ukrainian delegation to return for another round of negotiations. This comes after the first one in Miami, the next one that was in Moscow, and then now back with Ukrainians inside of Washington. I need to remind you that we still don't technically know what was fully said during that 5-hour-plus conversation. The only thing we know is that afterwards, the Russians told the Americans not to talk to the Ukrainians before going to Washington, D.C., which meant that Steve Witkoff was not able to meet with Zelensky as planned. Instead, on their way back, we knew that Steve Witkoff did call the Ukrainian foreign minister and said, hey, we're on an unsecured line. I can't tell you anything except for the fact that we want you back in Washington, D.C. And they said, okay, sure. We do know that the Ukrainian foreign minister did speak to other ministers from many different countries. Germany, France, Italy, Poland, the UK, you name it. Sat down, said, this is what we know so far. And they're now, I guess, fine-tuning new negotiations in which they'll bring to Washington, D.C., potentially next week. My question for you is, what do you think the Russians said to the United States that would be something they could maybe agree to or not agree to? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'll be sure to keep you updated, so please do share my videos and follow me for more.